What's up everyone, this is Brett from the BEERMKR team. Today we're going to be walking through transferring your finished beer from your beer maker over to your beer tap. So you've got a notification on your phone saying your beer is ready, and you've got a blinking white light on the front of your beer maker. Now it's time to move that beer from here to here, and it'll be ready to drink. So what you need for this step is your beer maker with finished beer, your beer tap, 2 gray valves with the red gaskets, 2 CO2 cartridges that come in your maker kit. You're really only going to need 1 right now, but we gave you an extra as a precautionary measure in case you run out of pressure, and then an alcohol wipe to clean your valves. So first we need to take our finished bag of beer out of the beer maker. So open up the machine and remove the lid. And so to get your bag of beer out, you need to disconnect these valves. And this step may have a little bit of spill, so that's why I like to have this towel ready. But go ahead and push that black button, disconnect the bottom valve first, and then disconnect your top valve. And that bag should still sit on that hanger. So to get it out, just lift up your brew tub, pull that off, and remove your finished bag of beer. So your brew tub, you can empty that out in your sink and throw this directly into your dishwasher. And your waste bag, you can throw that away. But before you do either of that, make sure to take off your gray valve, and you can put that in the dishwasher inside that little utensil basket. So now we're going to prep our beer tap, make sure all the valves are clean. So we're going to open this thing up and locate these gray tap valves. So taking that alcohol pad that came in your maker kit, we're going to wipe all the valves down. First, these inside of these gray tap valves, you're going to have 2 of those. The corresponding part of your gray valves here with the ones with the red gasket, wipe those down. And then finally, you want to wipe the inside of your white valves as well. There's going to be a little bit of buildup in there, so this one you may want to use a paper towel. Before we actually move our beer bag into our tap, we want to help you familiarize yourself with the beer tap. So when it's open, we want to call out 2 big things here. So first is one side is gray and one side is black. The gray side is where you'll actually be setting your beer bag. And on this gray side, we also have some text right here that says top valve. This is what we're going to refer to as the top of the bag, and that's this side with the handle. Also, we want to find out which line goes which direction. So we've got a CO2 line and a tap line. The CO2 line, if you kind of pull it out, it's got this pressure release valve attached to it. So that's the side that your CO2 is going to come from. And then this other one is actually your tap line. So your beer is going to come out of this one and obviously into your glass. Now that all your valves are cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and attach these gray valves to your tap. So remember, this is the one with the red gasket. We've said that a few times now. So we should pay extra close attention for this step, because if this is not connected properly, you'll leak your beer out when you pressurize it. So first, what you want to do is kind of make sure that this gasket is seated properly on the valve, that it's not sticking out over the edge anywhere. This red gasket's softer than the other one, so it does have a tendency to kind of dangle off. So just make sure to rub your finger around it, make sure that it's properly seated in there and there's nothing sticking out over the edge. Now, before you screw it into, it has a tendency to kind of go in crooked like this. So we found that if you go counterclockwise for a little bit, maybe a rotation, it'll click into place and then tighten it. And at this point, you can go ahead and tighten it pretty hard. And before you totally finish, go all the way around and make sure that there isn't any red gasket bulging out of there. If you have a bulge, then maybe you've over tightened it or things weren't aligned properly. So you can attach both valves. The 2 gray valves are the same, so it doesn't matter which side they go on. But again, we just want to make sure that they're nice and tight and everything feels like it's properly aligned. So now we're going to move the beer bag over into your tap. So again, remember that this is what we're considering the top valve. It's the one by the handle. And this is going into the gray side of your beer tap with that top valve over where it says top valve, and fold the handle back as it settles in there. And the way to orient these valves in these slots is you want this flange on the outside of this inner shell here so you can actually see it and press against it. Make sure both valves are all set in there. Then we're going to go ahead and attach our valves. So when you push this in, make sure your black button is facing up so you can access that when you actually want to disconnect it. But you line it up and go ahead and just press right in there. And then do the other side as well. And before we move any further, what you can actually do just to check that you don't have any leaks is give this bag just kind of a gentle press, and you'll see a little bit of beer coming out of this front tap valve. and just look at the seams like you did earlier in your BEERMKR to make sure that there's no leaking. So before we close this up, we really want to make sure that you don't have any tube lines that are sticking out and could get actually clamped, because if it gets clamped under pressure, you're going to have a really hard time getting that bag out. So make sure all your lines are tucked in properly. Close it slowly, kind of keeping an eye on those lines to make sure. And then also you can kind of feed this bag right up in there. One last line check, and then close it up. So before we attach our CO2, we need to do one last super important check to make sure that there's no kinks or pinches in your line. So to do that, basically take your tap, hold it down below the level of the beer, and open it up. You could probably do this over your sink, but as you can see, beer flows out of the tube, and that just means that nothing is blocking your system. If nothing comes out, open it up, scan your line for any kinks or pinches, and close your tap back up. So now we're actually going to screw in our CO2 cartridge. You're going to want to orient your beer tap in a way that helps you kind of reach it and give it a nice tight. So I personally like to flip it up this way. And so first, put your CO2 cartridge in there and start spinning. After a little bit, you'll feel a little bit of pressure. And so once it starts to tighten up, you want to go, and what you're going to hear is that bubbling and maybe even a little bit of a squeal. And give it a couple more screws to really make sure it's fully engaged. You're going to hear this air fill the void within your bag and inside the beer tap, and that may take a couple seconds. So now your beer tap is pressurized, and at this point it's very important that you do not open this for any reason without depressurizing it. To learn how to do that, there's another video. To get the most beer out of your beer tap, we suggest you sit it like this inside your fridge, but if you don't have the height to fit this in, you can actually put it on its side, but make sure it's the latch side facing up, otherwise it won't work very well. So once you've made space in your fridge, we suggest you leave your beer tap alone. Try not to move it, try not to shake it. The longer it stays, the clearer and the more delicious that beer is going to be. After about 24 hours, you're gonna have carbonated, delicious beer, but the longer you let it set, call it 2 or 3 days, it's just gonna get better and better. So we can go set that right in the fridge. Before you pour your first beer, it's good to purge just a little bit, maybe a couple ounces. And this is everything that kind of built up in the bottom of the bag. So you may have some hop matter, some yeast. So the last thing you do before you enjoy your beer is back on your BEERMKR, you're gonna have to press this white button. And what that does is it tells the system that you're done, and it'll let you start up a new recipe.